I'm not sure I dream about it. I think about it frequently. Remember?
Okay.
Did you see what they've done to it?
Well, I walked by it, so it looks like a.
They just bulldozed the whole thing, and there's this
Jeez.
palatial mansion there now.
Oh, so it's not the old house
No,
No, where?
redone.
No.
Oh, I saw it because it sold 20 years ago for $600,000.
I thought it was $1,300,000.
Well, this is 20 years ago. I saw it in the local paper when I was last here.
Oh, wow.
So there's a new house there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Whoever bought it, created
Glass
it.
palace.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So,
It's all glass and
Uh-huh.
kind of a terrace going out, taking, part of the lot.
Uh-huh.
It's worth looking at.
Did you walk down to it?
okay.
We didn't dare, but we sort of, walked far enough to see it.
Right.
Let's start.
I'm
okay?
ready.
Sati.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, just to let you know that it's.
Okay.
I'm going to take over your conversation.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Thank
Excellent.
you so much for giving this opportunity. I'm truly honored, and it's really important, I think, right now for Esalen, as it's going through one of its rebirth. To have your story with Esalen documented.
I'm
and
very
shared.
happy to do that. It's a, journey down memory lane for me. Very wonderful memory.
Yeah.
So my road to Esalen actually was extremely long. It was an odyssey, full of very unusual synchronicities. And it started actually in 1964 when I could leave Czechoslovakia for the first time, going to the West. And I went to a conference on social psychiatry, which was organized by Joshua Beer. And there was actually a little symposium on LSD psychotherapy. And there were people like Betty Eisner from Los Angeles. There was Virginia Satir. There was Joyce Martin and Pauline McCreary. They were therapists from London. And so I had the possibility of connecting with them. And they told me that the next year, 1965, would be a big LSD psychotherapy in Amityville, New York State. And they invited me, and they said I would have my stay paid for, room and board. So this was very exciting. I had possibility of buying an airplane ticket with Czechoslovakian Airlines for Czech crowns. And so I had a ticket which took me to New York, and then from New Haven to San Francisco, and then Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get any hard currency, but I was a guide for Henry David, who was working for the International Institutes in Philadelphia. And during our last meeting, he gave me $50. So I had this airplane ticket to the United States and $50. And so I went to New York City, but actually New Jersey was one of my former colleagues on a study journey. So I stayed for a week with them. I could see New York, and then I took a train to Amityville. And it was a wonderful conference organized by a foundation. And towards the end, I had the problem of getting to New Haven, where I had my next stop. And so I went to the mic and asked if anybody could give me a ride to New Haven. And there was a man called John Paul, or Paul John. He said he could take me, but he had to do a detour if I wouldn't mind. And always was open to see, new places in the United States. So we went, and then it turned out that the place where he had to go was Millbrook. So I had the possibility of meeting Tim Leary and Ralph Metzner. Ram Dass wasn't there at the time, so I spent a few hours there, and then he took me to New Haven, where I had next connection I studied the work of Ruth and Theo Litz, who were working with schizophrenic mothers and schizophrenic families. And I could stay overnight with them. And Theo arranged a lecture for me at Yale. So I gave a lecture there. I think I made $100 for that. And Fritz Radley, who was the dean of Yale, listened to the lecture and offered me a scholarship to come to the United States, next year. With a scholarship from the Foundation's Fund for Research in Psychiatry. So now with $100, then I flew to New York, where I had, to San Francisco, where I had the connection with Virginia Satir. She was in Palo Alto. I could visit the institute, Mental Research Institute, where Gregory Bateson and other people worked. And so I stayed with her, and I was taking a bus to San Francisco, sightseeing. And then weekend came, and Virginia Satir said, you'll be here alone next weekend because I have to go south. And I said, where are you going? And she said, well, I'm going to this place called Esalen. I said, can I come along? And she said, sure. So we drove down. We came here at night, and Virginia had room reserved in the big house, in Michael's room. But it was too late for me to get the place anywhere else, so we had to share the bed in Michael's room. And Michael Murphy walked in and saw me in bed with Virginia Satir. We thought he would have a heart attack. And Michael was very interested at that time in Eastern Europe, Russia, and also the other Eastern European countries. And so we spent a day together, and he took me for lunch at this wonderful place, which Bocarla Legendre and her husband was a venture capitalist. A wonderful place with a little lake and black and white swans. And then said that he would take me to Point 16, which was for sale, I think for $110,000. And so we went down the coast. It's a beautiful place. It's a plateau, and there were several buildings, and I was standing there looking at the coast. I said, this would be a dream to be able to live here. So I made that connection with Michael Murphy. And then when I came back on this scholarship, I was working at the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center, and I did quite a few seminars during those 7 years at Esalen. So I always took Friday off, and I flew here and did the workshop, and then I took what they call the Red Eye Express overnight flight from San Francisco to Baltimore. And then it was 1973. I was in a situation where I had a lot of material from psychedelic sessions, both from Prague and then from the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center where I was working. And it was more and more difficult to get finances and permissions for psychedelic work. So I decided to take a year off and, write a couple of books. I got actually an invitation from several publishers because we were the last place doing official psychedelic research in the United States. And so I accepted advance royalties from Viking Press and to write 2 books. And I went to New York City to my friends Bob and Lenny Schwartz, threw wonderful parties in New York City, and Michael Murphy was there. And he came to me and said, so Stan, what are you doing these days? I said, well, I'm taking a sabbatical, for a year. I want to write a book. And Michael said, well, why don't you come to Esalen? Esalen is a beautiful place to write a book. We'll give you a house and you'll do workshops for us. It's going to be a trade. So this is how I got to Esalen.
Amazing.
It's incredible synchronicities, on the way connecting with Melbrook people,
Yeah.
Tim Leary, Ralph Metzner, and then through Virginia Satir to Esalen.
Nice. I'm gonna pause for one moment